So welcome. We are in January, and so coming up from an organization that works on executive functions and goal-directed behaviors, these New Year resolutions are a great opportunity to set ourselves up for success. And so we're going to talk a little bit today about goal setting, but really what we're going to be talking about is this goal-directed persistence for lasting success. So to start off our agenda, we're going to dive into what goal-directed persistence is. We'll talk a bit about setting SMART goals as one of the first important steps for goal-directed persistence. We'll move into building habits that stick. We'll talk about problem-solving barriers that come up and staying motivated through the process. So what is goal-directed persistence? So goal-directed persistence is the ability to formulate a goal, develop a plan to achieve it, and consistently follow through or adapt until the goal is achieved. Sounds simple, right? But we all know that it's not that simple. You might be able to describe it in simple terms, but actually implementing is where things can be challenging. You sometimes will hear goal-directed persistence as stick-to-itiveness. It's following through on these things and not giving up midway through. That is like the quintessential story of New Year's resolutions, right? It's something that we set in January, and then by February, we've forgotten them already. I challenge any of you, think about what were your last year New Year's resolutions? Did we actually follow through with them? So this goal-directed persistence is that ability to set the goal and work toward it until achieved despite challenges. And that's where some of these concepts of grit and resilience, of persevering through challenges, that's the key to this goal-directed persistence. Because as we all know, life isn't just easy. It doesn't just happen. And so navigating these challenges is a very important part of goal-directed persistence. So why is persistence so hard? So motivation fades over time. Your initial excitement, it wanes. It's not as exciting anymore. So that fuel of pursuing a goal can wane over time. It could also be just as you're going through these routines, you're not seeing the benefits, you're not feeling them, or obstacles arise, and it's why can't it be done? And so your motivation can fade. And so what starts as a spark can fizzle without strategies to sustain it. And this is going to be an important motif through this entire webinar, is it's all about understanding why this is hard so we can set ourselves up for success. Cognitive effort is draining. So new habits and strategies require additional cognitive effort. And so when you're doing new things out of a routine, you actually you expend more energy to do these things. And that's actually tiring. It's not the same type of tiring as going out on a run, but it's cognitively draining. And so this can actually be mentally exhausting. And so because habit formation requires consistency and consistent effort, sometimes we give up on these goals and we don't persist through because of not acknowledging how difficult it is, how taxing it is, and not setting up strategies to be prepared for that. Our prioritization of effort. So sometimes when we set new goals, distractions pull our focus away. And so when you have multiple competing demands, whether from work, your personal life, academia, social life, you can often prioritize these immediate things over our longer term goals. And so when you're looking at this prioritization of effort, change is hard. And what we tend to do is we gravitate towards the familiar, or we avoid hard things. And so our distractions might actually be subconsciously, we're moving over towards these other problems that we're facing in our lives, and we lose sight of those goals that we may set for ourselves. The pull of ingrained behaviors. So, very similarly, old habits can feel easier or quicker. So, they can feel like a sugar rush. Let me just do it my old way right now. Let me just do the old way. So, even though they may be counterproductive, we can gravitate towards these because they're easier in the short term. And so we convince ourselves, maybe it wasn't really a problem. Maybe that goal wasn't really important that I set for myself. And so then we go to sticking with the familiar routines because we think that this is actually going to save us time or effort. And it's a way that we're lying to ourselves. Our brains are lying to ourselves. And so what we often need to realize is we set these initial goals or these initial changes we want to see for a reason. But as you move forward through persisting through it, we lose sight of that reason and we start to lie to ourselves again about, well, maybe the old way wasn't that bad. There's also a fear of failure. So, especially people that have set goals and then failed in achieving them, those past experiences can leave an imprint on us that we hesitate about really committing to change. And so then this can tap into some of our coping mechanisms around procrastination and avoidance, because if we don't try, then we can't fail. But this is again this short term, almost like sugar rush. Let's avoid the big picture failure. Let's avoid trying this new thing. But then we're losing sight of why did we want to try this new thing anyway? And we can start making excuses for ourselves to avoid the unfamiliar and the unknown. And then lastly, lack of immediate rewards. So oftentimes, some of these bigger picture goals we set for ourselves, bigger picture changes, behavioral changes, strategy changes, they don't immediately give you a reward. And so, since these long-term goals don't always provide this instant gratification, we are then looking for other forms of gratification. So instead of doing what can lead to a long-term benefit, we find ourselves reverting to looking for these short-term benefits. And that can lead to stagnation. And so the challenges with maintaining the motivation and effort through this period is very important to get to the point where you see results. And so I always like to go back to just like fitness goals because they're pretty ubiquitous and people can relate to them or identify them. You go to the gym once, you're not going to immediately get some of the benefits. You're not going to see the benefits. Might not actually be the best example in this because exercise does release endorphins. It does release some brain benefits to ourselves. But what's really important is, well, what about after like a month and a half of going to the gym? Now that same kind of rush and endorphins that are released don't sustain ourselves throughout because we haven't seen those results of I don't have a beach body yet. That takes more time to get there. And so persistence is challenging. And that's just really important to accept throughout the rest of this webinar. This is a basis that we are going with. This is hard. But let's go in clear-eyed that it's hard so then we can set ourselves up for success. So just what's some of the science behind persistence? So first off, there's this habit loop where you have a cue, a routine, and a reward. And so we are creatures of routine. We like habits. And so what ends up happening in our brain is a lot of the time we're making decisions and going through life on autopilot. We don't constantly put in cognitive effort in different areas. And so a lot of us, we're just set up with cues that lead into routines that lead into some type of reward. And what we need to do with understanding this is that part of the persistence of change and persisting through goals is we have to start to reshape those triggers and rewards so that we can build productive habits. So you might know looking out in that sitting on your phone and then scrolling through social media is a bad habit. But that habit, there might be a cue. Oh, I'm sitting at dinner. I don't know what to say. That's the cue to pull out my phone. Then I'm looking through my phone and I'm getting likes, or I'm looking at social media, and now we're receiving some type of reward from that behavior. Versus, well, the long-term goal might be I'm sitting, no one's talking at dinner. This is my cue to now start talking and engaging others. Let's build in that routine. And then that could lead to a reward of a great dinner experience and better social connections, but it's not as immediate. And so understanding that we have cues that trigger routines that then we associate with a reward. We need to understand that in order to remove the bad habits that have cues, routines, and rewards, and try to replace them with more positive, productive ones. Dopamine, the motivation molecule, is key to all of this. So, just like that example where the reward from the social media example I shared, the reward was a dopamine rush. So, almost all apps are designed to get you to continue to use it. And so, what a lot of these technology aspects do is they try to tap into your dopamine. And so what they're doing is rewards are triggering dopamine releases, and then our bodies are being trained to want to continue doing that behavior. But just scrolling through Twitter isn't leading to long-term rewards and benefits, but it is triggering a dopamine response. And so this is where we need to acknowledge that they're tricking us. They're taking advantage of our brain chemistry. So understanding that small wins release dopamine, which drive progress and motivation. But a lot of our society has tainted this with more addictive things like apps, social media, games on your phone, video games in general. But understanding this is the first step to how can I now take productive habits, productive goals, and tap into that same dopamine motivation molecule to help. There is an aspect of neuroplasticity. So remember when I said change takes cognitive effort. Doing new things takes more effort than doing old things. Well, these are, and I see a typo here, but those old behaviors, those ingrained behaviors, those are using well-established neural pathways. So that cue routine reward, it's this cue, you don't think about the routine all the time. It just happens automatically. That is accessing an established neural pathway. Now, there might be a more productive neural pathway, but carving out that new neural pathway is going to take that cognitive effort. And so, understanding that by doing actions, behaviors, strategies repetitively, more often, more frequently, what you're really doing is carving that neural pathway. And over time, that becomes easier and easier and easier. Now, with some self efficacy, belief fuels action. So, in coaching, a lot we talk about building confidence first because confidence in yourself fuels success and perseverance. And so, being confident helps you with really being able to navigate through the challenges and persevere through because you're not spending a bunch of time in your own head with self doubt. Self doubt is draining. All the reasons why you can't do things, why you're bad at things, that is taking up bandwidth in your brain. Whereas when you're confident, you're thinking about how I can do this. And so you're way more likely to persevere and persist towards a goal if your confidence is higher. If your confidence is low, instead of spending that cognitive energy on new things and change, you're spending your cognitive energy on self doubt. And that's where it can become a roadblock in being able to move forward. Delayed gratification. So we talked about short, instant gratification. Well, with the delayed gratification, it's starting to try and figure out how can we build in these systems so that we resist short-term temptations for long-term gains. Again, easier said than done, but acknowledging that often the things that get in the way of goal-directed persistence and longer-term goals and longer-term change is short-term temptations that pull us away from the longer-term goal. There's also emotional regulation. So, just like I said about the confidence aspect, and when you have self doubt, it takes up a lot of energy. Well, emotional regulation also can take up a lot of energy. If we're dysregulated and we aren't able to manage our emotions like frustration and boredom, it's going to lead to a lot of draining of our energy. And then we're not going to even feel ready to be able to pursue this change and follow through with things. And so being able to understand that emotional regulation sometimes is a really important goal because you are going to face setbacks when you're pursuing longer term goals, when you're trying to persist through. And so if you face setbacks and every time there's a setback, you have a complete meltdown, you lose a week of time, it's going to cause some real hurdles in being able to move forward. And then social and environmental influence. Very similarly, when you're in more positive environments with higher accountability and supportive environments, your defense mechanisms are able to lower. If you're surrounded by positivity, you don't have to be on the defense so much of protecting yourself. So again, your brain power, your energy can be focused on the change as opposed to focusing on limiting negative influences. I'll just do a quick reminder. If anyone does have questions, you can throw it in the chat box and I will get to them. So all of this sounds hard. And so why does persistence feel like an uphill battle? So it can feel like our brains and society don't set us up for success. And in a lot of ways, that's correct because society, apps, companies that are trying to make money, advertisers, all of this stuff, they want you to keep using them. And so they took this understanding of how our brains worked and they really manipulated it to work to their own advantage of keeping you on their sites, keeping you playing their games. Um, or sometimes there's magic like snake oil fixes. So our brains love this familiarity. This is one way that our brains don't work for us. Our brains like and are constantly looking for the most efficient ways to accomplish things because your brain's on autopilot. It's making so many decisions constantly that it does need to find the most efficient way to travel through your brain and help you navigate moving forward. So sticking to old routines feels safe and requires less effort. It's not the unknown. I know what I'm doing. I might not risk myself. There might not be failure. All of this is setting us up to like the routine. Technology feeds into those dopamine addictions. And so that instant gratification, notifications, likes, endless scrolling, it's rewiring our brain. The neuroplasticity aspect, it's setting up our brains to want quick rewards. Everything is a quick fix. And so what you're seeing more and more, people are struggling to put in effort for a big picture goal because their brains are becoming so wired that I should know the right answer right away. I can't tell you through the work we do with a lot of clients, they they want to know that it's going to be okay. They want to know the right answer. They want to be able to look up in the answer key and know what's right. And this aspect of having to sit and wait to see the results, it's really difficult for them because so many other aspects of technology are setting them up for instant gratification. And they just have unrealistic expectations of how life works. Um, Society encourages quick fixes. So crash diets, overnight success stories. Again, social media, it's showing all these great things you could have in 1 month. Well, great for you that you were able to achieve great success in 1 month, but that is not normal. And when you hear from a lot of people, it's so easy, just read on. This is now setting a societal expectation that it should be easy, and you're just broken. There is a magical fix. If you just read this thread, all your problems will be solved. And this is taking advantage of our insecurities. And it's helping us, it's preventing us from seeing that real positive long term change takes time and effort. It isn't a quick thread on Twitter. It isn't scrolling through a carousel on Instagram of these 5 quick tips. That's not realistic that something is that quickly to be solved. And so we are working against a lot of things that society is set up against us, or that our brains aren't naturally tailored towards. So the key to success here is to set yourself up for it. It's to set yourself up for that success. You don't just expect to build a house overnight. You develop plans, you establish a foundation, you understand what you want the house to look like. You break down into a project. What are the different steps? What are the resources I need? You wouldn't just jump in and expect a house to be built overnight with no plan. And so, what we need to be doing is, how do we set ourselves up for success? Let's accept the fact society is built against us. Let's accept the fact that our brains like routines. But now, what do we do about it? How do we move ourselves forward? And so, understanding the pitfalls is so important. Awareness of these challenges helps you design strategies to overcome them. So, knowing why persistent feels hard enables us to plan more effectively. And where you're seeing this go is, it's not just about setting a goal, it's about the roadmap towards that goal to set us up for success, including not just how to do the goal, but how to prevent these pitfalls from getting in the way. So, building supportive systems as well. So, creating these routines that do align with your goals and help automate and make success easier for yourself. So leverage these small, consistent rewards and wins to keep the dopamine working for you, not against you. So now that we have some insight into how dopamine works, how can we use that to our advantage instead of letting it be to our disadvantage? Plan for these setbacks, build resilience through accountability and reflection. And this is a very important thing. Whenever we're starting with new people through coaching, we try to share over, look, it's not going to be pretty. There are going to be bumps in the road, but be prepared for them so that we're ready to adapt through them, not give up right when there's a bump in the road, because that's what life is. That's how we navigate life. It's not just everything going according to plan. But since we know that, let's prepare. And then why does this matter? So, by designing systems to counteract these pitfalls, you can break free from your status quo that you might not think is ideal, and you can create lasting success. And that is the key about goal-directed persistence. So let's start from the get-go, formulating a goal. And I think I've talked about this in almost every one of the past 5 webinars, or something like that, because it is so important for tapping into these executive functions, is establishing good, smart goals. So what are SMART goals? They're specific, they're very clear, they're detailed and focused, they're measurable, the progress can be tracked, they're achievable, so it's realistic and attainable. They're relevant. They actually align with your values and priorities. And they're time bound. There is a clear deadline on them. So SMART goals are the foundation of goal-directed persistence. They help provide that clarity, focus, and direction, making it easier to stay on track. And so when you're more specific about a goal, there's less excuse making that we're naturally going to do. So let's set ourselves up not to be able to make excuses. And so what we're looking at sets us up for success by preventing the hemming and hawing, by preventing us from adjusting our goal. Well, why don't we do this? Well, this is enough, right? And all of these excuses that then just deteriorate the goal and the original purpose of why we may have set that goal. And so just looking at one example, you might want to be specific that the goal is to walk 30 minutes a day. I want to be healthier. I want to get in more steps. And so the measurable aspect maybe is, first of all, 30 minutes, that's measurable time-wise. But now the goal might be, well, I want to actually measure how far I walk in 30 minutes. Now, is it achievable? Well, maybe we want to build up to walking 30 minutes daily, but as part of my plan in achieving that goal, I'm going to start with 3 days a week. That's achievable. I can do three. And then you build up, and we make a plan on how to build up to doing it daily. Is it relevant? Well, if one of your goals is to improve your health and it fits with your current schedule, then yeah, it's relevant. And then the time bound. I want to be walking daily within 1 month. Well, let's build this out in a way so that this goal is achievable. So, why does goal setting and being smart about the goal setting really matter? Goals anchor our executive functions. So executive functions thrive when they're tied to clear, meaningful goals. And so what I always say to people when people first come in and I'm trying to get a understanding of where their executive functions are at, or a loved one's executive functions, I always try to understand, are there certain aspects in their lives where they are tapping into executive functions? So sometimes with like a college student, are they able to make plans with friends, get there on time, plan out how they're going to travel and see there? Are they tapping into executive functions in other parts of their lives? Because if they are, it might not be executive function deficits, it might be a goal setting deficit. And so executive functions are goal directed behaviors. If it's not a real goal for yourself, then they're not going to apply and help move you forward. So we this goal setting piece is so important in following through towards a goal because if you're not motivated by the goal, you're not going to apply your executive functions as readily and easily. So without the goal, it's easy to lose focus and then waste energy on your distractions. And it really comes down to, are you willing to do this? Are you willing to put in the effort? Is this goal motivating enough for you to put in effort and change? So goals, and on that same front, goals must be aligned with what you truly want. You want to be setting goals or helping loved ones set goals that really reflect what the person wants, not societal expectations or pressures. And so those pressures can sometimes come from loved ones, right? They can be biased. I want them to be proud of me. They want me to be a doctor. Well, if you don't want to be a doctor, it's going to be really hard to push yourself through to that. It's not motivating enough about this should language. So I should want this. I should do this. That should language can lead to burnout and dissatisfaction. And even more so, that should language ends up leading to a lot of guilt. Why don't I want this? And now, jumping back to the confidence piece I talked about in an earlier slide, when you should want something but you don't, your brain is spending time thinking about, why don't I want this? Why am I not successful? Why can't I just be more motivated? And then we get into a cycle that doesn't move us forward. And so really trying to set goals of things that we truly want is a key component of persisting through towards that goal, because that becomes the motivation to keep trying. And achieving goals requires sacrifices. So progress does demand trading some short-term wants for long-term outcomes. And so sacrificing your time, your comfort, or leisure in the short term can lead to fulfilling lasting success. I've seen this a lot with social goals for people where I want to be more social. I want to have friends. I want to connect with people. Well, in order to make deep connections, you might have to suffer through some awkward interactions. Meeting new people can be awkward. You might have to be vulnerable. You might not know if they share your interests. But are you willing to suffer through that awkwardness in order to find more meaningful relationships? And I've heard from some people, no, I don't want the goal enough. I'd rather sit in my room and play my video games. And that's okay. But if you try to keep forcing yourself, I should want friends, I should want friends. If you're not willing to make these sacrifices to achieve the goal, then is the goal really motivating enough? Is it really something that you want? And that's where sometimes through our work and coaching, it's really exploring, what do you really want? Or like in that case of the friendships, I know with a client, it was actually that he was trying to appease his parents, that his parents wanted him to have more friends. And so what his real goal was to get his parents off his back. I am going out to social activities so that I could tell my parents I was being social. But then when we started trying to work on engaging with people in those social activities, we had a roadblock because the goal was to get the parents off the back. Well, guess what? He accomplished that just by going to the social event. And then trying to move forward with social connections, we hit a roadblock because he didn't really want it. Now that can be challenging of sometimes the I don't really want it. It's more if they don't know how to get there, so they pretend they don't want it. And that's where trying to provide resources and really getting into, do you not want to do this because you don't know how to, or do you not want to do this because you really don't know, you really don't want to do it? Goals also provide that purpose and direction, so a well-defined goal serves as a compass, guiding our daily actions and decisions toward meaningful outcomes. So identifying your goals, I'll probably give you guys 30 seconds or so. If you want to share them in the chat, you can. But it could also just be a self-reflective exercise. So take a minute to identify any goals you have, maybe any New Year resolutions that you've come up with. And then I want you, even if it's just one, I want you to ask yourself, are they smart? Are they specific, measurable? Are they attainable? Are they relevant? Are they time bound? And then even with that, maybe you don't want to go through all of the smart steps, but could you see yourself making excuses that could get in the way of achieving that goal? And this is where building in some of those confines around SMART goals helps us get out of our own way. The last thing I'd want you to ask yourself when reflecting on that goal or goals is, are you willing to put in the effort through the good and the bad to achieve that goal? Are you willing to struggle through? And don't worry about, well, I'm not in a time machine. I don't know if I'm going to want to struggle through 2 months from now. Are you willing to struggle through now in the future? And by thinking about this way, now what we can do is, well, how do I make sure I maintain this motivation throughout the entirety of this goal? So now just to move on to from goals to plans. So why does a plan matter? So a SMART goal is just the first step. To really achieve persistence, we need a strategy that accounts for these obstacles and maximizes motivation throughout. And so a goal without a plan is just a wish. So SMART goals can give clarity, but without these actionable steps on how to achieve it or how to prevent regression and giving up on the goal, even the best goals can feel unattainable. And then they're just stuck in the wishing phase. So understanding those challenges ahead, our brains crave these routines, and society tempts us with quick fixes. And understanding that setbacks are inevitable. It's part of the process. It's totally normal. So good planning prepares for these challenges. Designing a system for success. So break the goal into smaller milestones to create consistent wins. That way we get dopamine boosts. So rather than just saying, I need to complete this project, it's how can we break this project down into 5 different steps so that now instead of just one big win at the end, it's 5 little wins that can help sustain some of this dopamine throughout the process. And one of the things that you can do here is focus not just on outcomes, but sometimes inputs. So at least I tried. I put in an effort. That's a win still. I tried something new. You can schedule actions intentionally to minimize distractions and automate success. And then also anticipate obstacles by identifying common pitfalls and pre-planning responses. So this is when this happens, what can I do? By pre-planning, you're making it easier on yourself when a poor outcome happens or some obstacle or pitfall comes up, that you've already done the thinking, the pre-thinking on it. Now, these might be for obstacles that you actually can predict that are typical coming up. And there are still going to be ones that are totally off our radar. But let's limit how many of these pitfalls and obstacles are totally off our radar to better set ourselves up for success. So make the goal feel achievable. So tie the actions to your values to reinforce motivation. Then build in flexibility to your plan to adapt when life happens. So whenever something is due with a client we may have, or whenever we have some benchmark we want to achieve, it's always important to try and give yourself some breathing room for error. And so, just like let's use a student example. If they have a essay that's due next Friday, let's set ourselves up to try and have it done by Wednesday. So we give a 48-hour buffer for problems coming up. Because without that buffer, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. Because if anything goes wrong, oh my God, the sky is falling. And so by building in this room for error, it's setting ourselves up for better success. Reflection, the bridge to problem solving. So recognize patterns, what's working and what's not. We're going to talk more about reflection more in depth, but you want to adjust your plan to overcome barriers that maybe you didn't know about prior. So as you're going through and implementing a goal and strategies to achieve a goal, be prepared to adjust your plan as you receive new information. So you may learn more about yourself, metacognition. You may learn more about a new environment. And so be prepared to adapt your plan as you learn more as you're navigating through a goal. And then you do want to make sure that you're staying connected to your values and why the goal matters to you. So this reflection piece sets the stage for effective problem solving. I always like to bring this back to like an example that resonates with a lot of us. You can see right there, that's a picture of me and my mom. Right there is a picture of me and my partner. There's a drawing right there from my goddaughter. And then hidden right over there is my niece and me. Why do we put pictures of our families and loved ones on our desks? Well, you know what? Sometimes work is not fun. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's annoying. But we have these little visual reminders of why are we doing these goals? And these little visual reminders connect us to our values and why these goals matter. Why am I going to go through the workday and be productive as efficient as possible? It's these people. And so it is tying and making sure that we're tying these goals to, well, why? Why am I doing this? Why am I persevering through? And knowing your why to help keep driving you and persisting forward. Now, reflection sets the stage also for this effective problem solving. Last one is stay accountable here. So, using external supports like accountability partners, apps, or mentors to stay on track. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be like a coach, even though coaching is a key, one of our key pillars is about accountability coaching. But sometimes as simple as once a week, I'm going to grade myself on the goal. That is building in a system and a habit that can help keep us accountable. I'm keeping track of this to catch myself when I may fall off the routine or the new behavior or the new strategy. Let's catch ourselves sooner. And this is where we're going to lead into reflection and the importance of this reflective and self monitoring practices for goal directed persistence. So, building change that lasts. We'll get to the self monitoring after this section. So, why habits matter? So, we talked a bit about the more you do something, the easier it becomes. You establish these neural pathways. So, it reduces mental effort that's required to stick to your plan. And so, consistent actions eventually lead to automatic routines. We already talked about the habit loop a little bit, but really understanding that the way we can set up habits is how do we have a cue that can trigger to initiate the habit? And then what's the routine to perform that behavior consistently and the reward to help reinforce that behavior? And so, one of the things, for example, I wake up on Saturday and it's cleanup day. Let's clean up the apartment. Let's go through things. And so, when I wake up on Saturday, what am I going to do? Let me have my coffee. And then that triggers into the routine of let's do a cleanup. Let's get the laundry in. Let's do these things. And then some of the reward is then I have the rest of my Saturday to do things. Start small for sustainable change. So just like we talked about, maybe instead of walking every day, let's start off with 3 days out of the week. So you want to build out systems where you begin with manageable steps to build momentum. You're building these wins. You're building in dopamine boosts from accomplishing things. And then that slowly becomes a positive loop that starts to sustain more and more motivation to do it more and more. So gradually increasing these habit scopes or these strategy scope so that it becomes more ingrained. Leverage that dopamine. So make sure to celebrate small wins. So it's not just, oh, I got it done. So sometimes it's really about, let me take 30 seconds to praise myself. I did this. This is a big area that we do in coaching because people don't take enough time to actually do this for themselves. Stop and say to yourself, good job. I got up and I went to the gym. I got up and I went to walk. And making this progress tangible and measurable. This is part of the science behind a checklist. Actually, crossing things off a checklist is a visual, tangible representation of what you get done. And that helps you feel more positive. Tracking the number of steps can visualize progress, releasing dopamine boosts. Plan for hurdles. So use reflection moments to anticipate and adjust obstacles. So for example, if you know you always get distracted when you have to sit down and plan out your week, well, let's set ourselves up to not get distracted. Where should we do it? What should we do to set ourselves up in that sense? um, Embed habits into existing routines. So this could be like habit stacking, where you pair new habits with established ones or enjoyable activities. So you use the momentum of a current behavior to support new ones. So one of my favorite with like habit pairing um, is I love listening to podcasts. I work from home now, so I no longer commute really. And so I lost this opportunity to just listen to music and listen to podcasts or listen to audiobooks. So now I've paired folding laundry, which I absolutely hate. It is so boring. I don't enjoy it. I don't get a dopamine boost from it. But what I've done is I pair it where I actually look forward to for tasks like doing the dishes or folding or doing laundry by pairing it with another activity that does release the dopamine. So pairing it with listening to a podcast makes it easier to adopt that habit. In an academic example, I'll share from back when I was in college. When I was taking notes on textbook chapters, I would actually play music. But then when I was studying, I wouldn't. But the note taking part was the most annoying part. It just took so much time. And so I was able to pair those together where I looked forward to taking notes so I could listen to music. Flexibility is key. So understanding that life happens and adjusting those habits without abandoning them. So this is a great example. You might be, oh my God, I woke up late. I typically go to the gym in the morning. Well, instead of not going at all, why don't we just go for 5 minutes? Why don't we just go walk on the treadmill? Just that aspect, what you're doing is maybe you're not committing to the full habit of getting a good workout in, but you are developing that habit and those neural pathways of getting up and going to work out. So you don't have to give up on the entirety, but you can maintain certain aspects of the habit or goal so that you're not just starting from scratch. And then the accountability amplifies success. So share your goals with someone who will check in with you, join a group or community working towards similar habits or goals, or a friend. So, as promised, the importance of self-monitoring. So, self-monitoring is the reflection on progress towards a goal. It's kind of like looking in a mirror and saying, where am I at? It's a check on ourselves where we can ask ourselves, is the goal still relevant to me? This is a big thing we do with coaching. It's like, are you still bought into this goal? Like, do you remember why we were doing this? Is it still motivating to you? Is the plan working, or do we need to make some adjustments to that plan? And am I actually following through with doing things? And so this is just going back to the big picture of goal directed persistence. Setting the goal, is it still a relevant SMART goal? Is my strategy and plan in achieving it working for me? And am I actually following through with the strategy and plan? So this helps with maintaining accountability. It keeps you connected to the goal and progress by checking in. It's so that you don't lose that motivation of why you're doing the goal. And it prevents this out of sight, out of mind. So a lot of the times we can start like do things in fits and tantrums, and then, oh, I'm not consistent with it. And now, oh, I forgot about it. I'm not going to check in because I don't want to see how I'm not achieving a goal. So when we are able to build in self-monitoring and reflection, we're able to prevent that subconscious aspect of avoidance. It really does encourage problem solving. So you're able to identify barriers earlier and adapt your approach when you build in these reflection times. And it help keeps it mitigates small setbacks from snowballing into larger ones. So the more we're able to check in with ourselves, the more with more agility, we're able to nip in the bud these problems before they escalate and become larger problems, or before we totally abandon a goal. Prevents that goal dissipation. So it avoids the trap of it's been too long, I'll just wait until. And it helps reinforce the momentum and prevent the guilt of missed opportunities from stalling progress. And lastly, it reinforces motivation. It's not all bad. It's not always when you are self monitoring and reflecting that it's everything that's going wrong with things. It's sometimes also a great opportunity to stop and check in with yourself. Wow, I've made some progress. It can help us really carve out the time to reflect on our wins and our growth. And so that can help release that dopamine and get that dopamine working for us instead of against us. And this helps with progress becoming tangible, building confidence and commitment. So, how to build self monitoring in your plan? Set regular reflection times, weekly or daily check ins to assess progress and adjust the plans. Example, so maybe spend 10 minutes every Sunday reviewing your goals and planning for the week ahead. Trying to track progress visually, so using habit trackers, progress bars, or journals to see how far you've come, keeping like a goal journal, my progress towards this goal. Ask yourself some key questions: what's working well? What challenges have arisen? And what changes can I make to stay on, and leverage these accountabilities tools? So share progress with a coach, mentor, or friend, and use the apps or reminders to stay consistent. That way, like if you don't have another person to help with, setting up some accountability tools of reflecting, actually writing it down, making it concrete, can help us catch ourselves getting in our own way or lying to ourselves. So now looking at problem solving barriers and staying on track. So challenges are part of the process. We've talked about this a bit. Setbacks are inevitable, but they're not failures. They're opportunities to learn and adapt. And this is when people talk about a growth mindset. This is what they're really talking about. So persistence doesn't mean never stumbling. It means getting back up and adjusting course. Just accept it. It's part of the process. You should want struggle because these are opportunities for us to learn and do better and change. Identify the problem clearly. So, using self monitoring to pinpoint the specific barrier. Is it that I have a lack of time? Maybe I need to break down this goal or this habit into smaller component parts. A loss of motivation. Let me revisit what was the goal and why did I set it in the first place? I trust old May. I trust that me from 6 months ago had great intentions and really wanted this goal. So, what's changed? An unexpected external challenge maybe has come up, and how can we problem solve that? So clearly identifying these can make problem solving more effective. I did it in the last webinar, so I didn't want to do a full plug again, but you could check it on our website. We use a problem solving paradigm called RISE: recognize, identify, strategize, and evaluate. And so with this, really building in how are we recognizing that problem very clearly so I can develop strategies to overcome that problem. Brainstorm possible solutions. This is like the I in our RISE model, identify. And so take a creative approach. Maybe if there is a time issue, break the goals into smaller, more manageable chunks. If it's a motivation issue, revisit your why and celebrate the progress. Sometimes that's super motivating. If you start waning after like 2 months, 3 months of a goal, start saying to yourself in like How far have I come? Oh my God, I'm a lot farther than I thought. I can't believe I was ready to give up. Can't believe what I have changed. And then distractions, maybe as an issue. So set boundaries or adjust your environment. Now, it's important to adapt the plan, not the goal, as much as possible. Really, when we're going through goal directed persistence, giving up on a goal should be like last resort because trust your old self. There was a reason we set these goals, there was a reason. And so, unless there's been some major changes, anytime you're feeling like you want to give up on a goal, should set off red flags and sirens that am I getting in my own way? Am I going to regret this decision to give up? So, flexibility is key. You want to modify your approach without losing sight of what that objective is. Maybe it is hard to achieve that goal, so maybe there's a different way to go about doing it. So, if your original plan may have been to work out in the mornings, instead of just saying, oh, I'm not going to work out, maybe try an evening routine. For one, will tell you I don't like that idea because I go in the morning because there's less people. But coming up with creative ways. Seek supportive perspectives. So share what your challenges are with a coach, mentor, or accountability partner. They might be able to give you an outside perspective and help give you some external inputs that maybe give you a different way to look at the problem or obstacles you're facing. Use reflection as a continuous tool. So that regular reflection is ensuring that the challenges are addressed promptly rather than digging a larger and larger hole for yourself to climb out of. And then always make sure you're evaluating what worked. Double down on that. I'm really proud of myself that I found this that works for me. And then start to look in what didn't work and refine the plan as needed. And prevent this all or nothing trap. So there is never going to be perfect execution. And so progress isn't linear. Small steps forward still count. You might take 2 steps back, but then let's make consistent 3 steps forward. And that is still progress. And so if you miss one day of an action, pick up where you left off instead of waiting, oh, I'll just wait till next week. So staying motivated and keeping the fire alive. So motivation is a starting point, not the destination. Motivation may spark action, but our habits and systems sustain it. Things aren't always going to be super exciting. It's not. And so understanding that what the real goal for goal directed persistence is to get new strategies and habits so ingrained that you don't need motivation to fuel yourself through it. If you think about working professionals, we don't want to say that like it's the most motivating thing in the world to wake up every single day and go to work. It's not the most motivating thing in the world. But the key is you set up a good routine so that you don't need motivation to wake yourself up, make the coffee, get through, get to the office, sit in front of your desk. Where if we sat there and said we need motivation to do that every single day, how many people would actually make it to work? It's not that the goal is to constantly be motivated, but it's to help get us to the point where we don't need to put in so much thought to stay motivated, or so much thought to accomplish these things. And understanding that motivation is going to ebb and flow. It's normal. So being motivated shouldn't be the strategy. We should develop strategies around when we're not motivated for goal directed persistence. I will say the motivation piece, it's such a common issue I'm seeing with youth nowadays that oh, I'm not motivated, so I can't. It's become this kind of blanket term, and it's not their fault. They think motivation is so essential, and if I'm not motivated, no wonder I can't do it. No, it's kind of like suck it up. You're not always going to be motivated. Um, I know I don't, thank God I'm full time and I don't need to do this anymore. But like keeping timesheets back when I was like an hourly worker, not motivating to do a timesheet at all. But I had to do it. It was motivating to get paid, but it wasn't motivating to actually put in the work. But no one asked if you like doing this. There are things to accomplish big picture change and goals that aren't going to be motivating throughout. And that we just have to accept that. So, how do we set up systems so that we're not as reliant on this abstract idea of motivation? Celebrate the small wins. So, break big goals into smaller milestones to create opportunities for success. And then celebrate the progress, no matter how small. We got to build in some of this dopamine that our efforts are valid and we're trying, and let's acknowledge that. And that small dopamine boost can help replace where we then would look elsewhere in less productive habits. Always connecting over to your why. So, regularly revisiting why your goal matters to you. Tie your actions to personal values to reignite the intrinsic motivation. And then, for example, write a short reminder about the purpose of your goal and keep it visible, just like the pictures. That's an aspect of why am I doing this? What am I trying to achieve? If someone wants to be an astronaut, but they're struggling through school, well, put up a little picture of space. That can be the carrot of, I don't want to do this, but I want to do that. And that picture can be that why for us. Use positive visualization. So imagine achieving your goal. How will it feel? What will it look like? And so that visualization can help reinforce your commitment and strengthen your belief in success. You could also build resilience through reflection. So reflecting on identifying what's working and adjust what isn't. So the reflection is a moment to recharge your motivation by acknowledging progress and giving yourself a little bit of that dopamine hit. Creating those external accountabilities, sharing the goals with others to help keep you on track, and then using accountability groups, coaches, or apps to maintain consistency. And this doesn't have to be forever. Remember what I said. With change, it's hard at first to get over that habit forming hump. But once you've done things consistently enough, you're not always going to need an accountability group, coach, or app. It's you need that over the hurdle of getting this to be a new behavior. My favorite was working with students on like essay writing, and no one ever wanted to outline. They always thought it was a waste of time. It took a lot of effort. But after doing it for like 3 essays, they couldn't think of any other way. These neural pathways got established for them, and they didn't need a coach to keep them accountable and following through with outlining. It became their new status quo. It became their new normal that they didn't even have to put a lot of thought into. Avoid the motivation myths. So, motivation doesn't mean feeling excited every day. It's focusing on showing up and taking action even when it feels hard. So, motivation can get you started, but habits keep you going. And then incorporate enjoyment into the process. So find ways to make pursuing your goal enjoyable. So listening to music while exercising or turn a work task into a game. There's this whole field of gamification that's out there. So reigniting your motivation, think about a goal you're working on right now and answer these questions. What excites you most about achieving this goal? What's one small win you can celebrate today? And then how can you make the process more enjoyable this week? And just revisiting this stuff, re-tapping into that source of why. Why do I want to achieve these things? And so one question that we ask typically in like our consultation process, but if you didn't have to put in any effort, where would you want to be a year from now? What would it look like? And then that's where you find the motivation because we often avoid these goal settings or what we want to do because it's so hard to visualize what does that actually look like and how do we get there. So just to recap, goal-directed persistence defined as the ability to set a goal, develop a plan, and adapt or follow through until it's achieved. Formulating that goal, it's the importance of setting meaningful SMART goals to provide clarity and direction. Developing a plan, so building systems that incorporate reflection, self-monitoring, and accountability to stay on track. Building habits that stick, so using the habit loop to turn consistent actions into automatic behaviors. Problem solving barriers, so recognizing and overcoming challenges through flexibility and proactive solutions. And then staying motivated, leveraging your small wins, reflection, and accountability to maintain momentum. So now just the next steps to putting it into practice. Reflect on your goals, write down one meaningful goal you want to achieve this year, ensure it's aligned with your values and framed as a SMART goal. Design your plan. So outline milestones, break that goal down into smaller component steps But also make sure that you're building in the actions and reflection times for that goal. And identify potential obstacles and plan for solutions in advance. Commit to a habit. So choose one habit to support your goal and use habit stacking to integrate it into your routine. Stay accountable. Share your goal and plan with someone you trust, or maybe use a tracker or app to measure progress. And then celebrate your progress. Schedule moments to reflect on wins and adjust your approach as needed. Reward yourself for milestones achieved. So remember, change is hard, but it's worth it. By building habits and systems, you can achieve lasting success. Take the first step today, and remember, it's progress, not perfection, that matters most.